From Ticker, you're watching She's the Boss. Here's Jules Brooke.
Hi and welcome to She's the Boss. My name is Jules Brooke. On the show we like to talk with women in business about how they got there, what they did and what we can learn along the way. And of course we get to know them and their businesses as well. Now today I'm very excited because on the show I have got Helen Woods, who is an executive coach and has a business called CEO Confidential, and Gwynne, who has a business called Summer Breeze that she's going to tell us all about. So welcome, girls.
Thank you.
Fantastic to have you on the show. Now, what I'm going to do first is I want you to tell me a little bit about yourself. So let's start with you, Helen. Can you tell me, what do you actually do? What's an exec? Well, I kind of vaguely know what an executive coach is, but I don't know what CEO Confidential is. So it sounds like you're dealing with big businesses, and how you got there.
Well, CEO Confidential has really evolved and emerged out of a lifetime of interest in having conversations that matter with people.
Right.
And
does that mean I can be one too?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And probably more recently, that's been developed with people in C-suite positions, but it's not exclusively about that. It's about I've had some conversations that really matter with this person.
Oh,
just over
great!
The last few weeks.
I want to hear how that's been working.
So we're a bit of a case study.
But when you say conversations that matter, what does that mean? So say I'm a CEO, which I am actually. Now I think about it, even though I call myself a head honcho. But anyway, so what can you do to help me?
Well, people invariably come with an issue, a problem to solve, and it's usually because they've got a blind spot.
Business problem you're talking, or personal problem?
Well, sometimes it presents as a business problem, but it's deep down in
childhood.
Yes, well, yeah, sometimes.
Who knows?
But it look, often the folks that we're talking to who are very senior in a chief operating officer type role are terrific and absolutely amazing at the technology of running that part of the business. But they get tripped up by some of the other issues, like people issues or systems that don't work or something.
Yeah.
And invariably that involves having to grapple with something.
And you've got no one to talk to. If you're CEO, you can't show your weakness, I guess.
No.
So you're the person that they can go, oh my God, it's all falling to pieces, and you go, take a deep breath.
Yes.
Keep going, and then they can go back and be super professional with their colleagues or whatever without having to sort of show that there are issues.
So those conversations are really about often unpicking a situation that is spooking them.
All right, and we're going to come back. I'm going to get you to give me an example of one. But how did you get there? How do you become an executive coach? You say you had lots of conversations, but I mean, have you been working your way through the corporate world, or?
Look, I have, but it's been over a really long period of time, more than 25 years. So I've been in my own business really after a small 10 years working in government after finishing at university a long time ago.
I don't want to laugh, but going from government to working for yourself, I kind of get that.
Yeah. Well, I certainly did.
Already.
It was a big leap for me, and it was an easy one.
Yeah.
And look, I've co-founded 3 consulting businesses over the years, and my start was working with not-for-profits.
Right.
So the Australian Ballet is a very long time client of mine.
Right.
I'm just humbled and still excited.
I was going to say, what a great business to get to go to their shows.
So I learned how to have conversations that mattered with organisations in the not-for-profit sector, and invariably that's about having a vision, having good leadership, good governance, being able to support a business. So some of that involved actually raising tens of millions of dollars to create opportunities to fund big visions.
Right. Wow. So you've done all that as well.
So it's been it's been a whole of system kind of evolution for me around developing my skills through not-for-profit. Now I'm working with, of course, all sorts of organisations.
But it's great that you've had that big background, so that you are, I mean, there's something great about growing old that I love, and I'm not saying that we're old, but we're older than really young people,
and that wiser.
That we have the wisdom, and that we kind of have all this experience that we can draw on. Wow. So you two have been working together. Summer, all I've said to everybody is that you're running Summer Breeze. I have no idea how to describe it, so can you try?
Yes, no worries. So I have a business called Summer Breeze Consultancy, which is about supporting parents in the early stages of parenting and helping them to get back to work.
Oh,
but
that's a service
all
that's
of that
needed.
comes from a really long journey, a very personal journey myself.
Oh, can you tell us?
Yeah.
Go on.
And this personal journey has led me then to want to make things better for other parents.
Right.
So I'm a mother of 6.
6?
Yeah.
How
and
old are your kids?
They are now 20, 18, 17, 15, 11 and 9.
Wow,
And
wow. I had no idea. So
yeah,
6
yeah.
kids, right.
And I live in a rural town in Tasmania,
Right.
and like many rural families, I haven't had any family support around me. My family lives on the mainland, and I had it a little bit tough. I didn't have a lot of support, and my husband was working away from home, so those early child rearing years were really hard for me. Plus, I was a nurse. Well, I still am a nurse, but I've been a nurse for 20 years and worked in paediatrics and neonatal intensive care for 18 years.
Right.
And my story really began when a few years ago, my youngest started full-time school, and I'd been working that whole time at the public hospital, but I really knew that I had a lot more potential. I'd been doing the same job, the same shift work for all those years, and I'd sort of outgrown the hospital setting. I'd outgrown that old self. I felt like I had too many personal experiences, and I developed too much professionally that I couldn't just work in that same environment.
And were you also meeting women that you thought, I could help you outside of this?
Like, well, I wasn't just meeting.
There must have been loads of that.
Yeah. All the time they were calling on weekends, on weekdays.
Any new mum who's dealing with someone, but any new mum is you know, really in a fog anyway.
Yes.
And especially if it's your first, you are terrified as well.
Exactly.
To be able to speak to someone who's had loads of children.
Had loads of kids.
Straight away, and then who's a nurse is,
right.
I can see straight away why they were calling
nurse. And then, but somebody who's always been very real to say, it's really, really tough. I get that. I love it, but I still get that it's really tough, and sometimes it's just such hard work.
I saw on your website actually the breastfeeding bottle thing, and you know, as somebody who breastfed my first child and then bottle fed my second, and then realised what I used to call the breastfeeding Nazis, because the way that they guilt you if you don't want to, if you know, I mean, and there's so many women that can't. So anyway, I just it's something that I thoroughly agree with, that you know, everything that you do is right as a mum, really. You just need somebody to go, you know, take a deep breath, it's all right.
I have this philosophy of doing what's best for you and your family as long as it's safe. And if you ground yourself with that all the time, it gives you permission to make the decisions for yourself.
Yeah. So tell me, so you're a nurse at a hospital, you're getting all these calls all the time.
Yeah.
What was the moment that made you go, you know what,
and
I want to know how what it was like?
It was an argument between my husband and myself. that's what it was. It
Great
was
answer.
one of those. So it was a Sunday morning.
And she argues with her husband. My God, she's human.
So, you know, 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning, I got a phone call from a mum who just could not do it anymore.
Yeah.
She was ready to actually jump off the bridge.
Oh, God.
And I knew that it was Sunday morning, we have bacon and eggs for breakfast, we have family time. So I'm like, oh crap, I'm really torn. I'll sit here and enjoy my coffee, and then I'll just quietly leave. I didn't come back till lunchtime.
Right.
And this is about the, 10th, 20th time it had happened that on a weekend I'd given my time and energy to somebody else. And my husband.
And this is before you have a business, so he's going, you're doing all this for free.
Yes, exactly.
You've got a full-time job as well.
That's right. And he said, you can't do this anymore. And I said, I have to do it. These women have no one else to turn to. And he said, if you want to do this, you have to start being paid for it. And my thought process was, you don't get paid to care.
Yeah.
I said, well, what do you think you've been doing all these years as a nurse?
I'm loving your husband, can
yeah.
I say?
So that was the light bulb moment,
isn't
that if I wanted to continue caring for mothers in the home environment, I had to actually make a business out of it.
Yeah, right.
So that's what I thought, okay, I need to honour these women and actually take up their cause and do something about it.
So what do you do? What's the first thing you do?
I went back to uni. I did child and family health and infant mental health.
Yeah.
I tried
Any
working
business management sort of stuff?
No, not
Right,
yet.
okay.
I tried working in the government setting still as a community nurse, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't stick to their screening and surveillance and policies and procedures. I know that it's needed and how valuable it is, but I had so much more to give and so much more I wanted to teach parents. So that's when I just created my own business model.
Yeah.
And went out on my own with
Which
a business.
was roughly when? Can you give me an
Oh,
idea?
about 3 years ago now.
Right, okay.
But as part of this journey of supporting women, I then became an advocate for women who are doing it really tough and needed a voice. And I didn't actually choose this role. It just sort of came up. So before I knew it, I was working with the National Rural Women's Coalition, advocating for rural women and rural mothers. And that sent me to Canberra, to Parliament, to stand there and say, hey, if we're going to be talking about rural health here and rural mental health, we need to be looking at the grassroots level here of supporting parents at that time in their life.
Wow.
Because later on, we're rolling into mental
You're
health.
absolutely right, but great that you actually went into government and
Yeah.
did that. There's not a lot of women would go and take that extra step.
Yeah, and then
Did they pay attention?
They did, and
Good.
I had some great support from lots of local politicians in Tasmania.
Yeah.
But then it took me to advocating for other things. There was the death of a 3-year-old boy in Tasmania from a bouncy ball.
Right.
He choked on his mother's arms. And I thought, my God, we can't let this happen again. Do parents know what to do? And I'm sure that parent did everything she could, but it was a wake up to lots of other parents up there. Do we actually know what to do?
Yeah.
So I decided then we needed to do something about it. We needed to provide parent first aid courses for rural parents about how to actually deliver first aid and CPR to their children in
Brilliant.
rural environments. So I got on the
That's
board of the
brilliant.
Child Health Association of Tasmania. I was their first nurse to be on their board and said, hey, we actually need to be going out into the community and delivering these courses.
That is
So-
brilliant because, you know, I have 3 boys, but when my youngest was really small, my husband at the time was feeding him, and it was the first time he'd put the food into a ceramic bowl.
Yeah.
But the baby was still a baby, wasn't taking the bowl. Anyway, what happened was he went to go and run the bath. Child went up and pulled the glass bowl down onto the floor, smashed. Picked up one of the pieces to have a look at it. My ex came out of the bathroom and went, "Oh my God, Jake!" And he just went like that and severed
Yes.
the things there. And I remember I didn't realise at the time, but my ex had no idea how to do first aid.
Yeah.
He didn't know to apply pressure.
Yes.
And I sent him on a first aid course on the back of that. So I can
Yeah.
totally see every mother should be
Yes, and it's
doing
totally
that.
different when it comes to babies and children. The sort of first aid and CPR that you deliver is totally different.
Yeah.
So I was just pleasantly surprised that I could actually make something happen. And then starting to get confidence in myself, I then started to look for other opportunities and say, yes, I'd like to do that. I'd like to give it a go and help people.
Right.
Which has now led me to be on the advisory council for the ABC.
Oh,
So,
wow.
an opportunity
Isn't she
where I-
amazing?
Yes, she is amazing.
So this has just started this year, and I'm so excited that I now get to deliver stories to the ABC and say these are the stories that we need
That
to be
matter.
listening to. These are the ones that matter. These are the things that people want to be hearing and listening to and talking about.
Right.
So I don't now want to just work in the field of parenting and babies, which I absolutely
getting
love.
huge.
Now I actually want to be available to everybody and actually take up their causes, listen to them, and have the honour of taking them to other cities and other areas. So,
How fantastic.
And if it wasn't
So
this
I was going to
beautiful
say,
woman-
which leads me perfectly into,
Yeah.
because we'll go to a break in a minute, but I'm interested to know, how did you find Helen?
this is a beautiful story, actually. It's
quirky.
Yeah, it is very quirky.
Quirky, I love.
So I have been told, I'm not a businesswoman. I should say I own that I am a businesswoman, but I don't actually have the background in that area. I am learning. I've been told I need to get onto social media, to Instagram, to Facebook, and to LinkedIn.
Yes, yes.
So I reached out to LinkedIn World, and I just got one knockback after another. And I thought that
Oh.
was a place where you actually connected,
Yeah.
where you met people, you sent emails, you became brave. But I found it was actually really scary. I would send out all these messages and I wouldn't get a response, or people weren't interested. It just felt like everyone had a protective barrier or defence system up.
Now hold that thought, because we're going to just go to a quick break and we'll be
worries.
back in a couple of minutes, and I want to hear all about what happened then. So
Thank
we'll
you.
be back shortly.
Ticker.
From Ticker, you're watching She's the Boss. Here's Jules Brooke.
Well, welcome back to She's the Boss. I forgot to say earlier, we also have a great sponsor, Havana Home, where we're very, very thrilled to get that support. And Havana Home make the most incredible fragrances. It's run by a woman and she's supporting female artists on her packaging. So get yourself over to Havana Home. But in the meantime, I want to keep hearing about this story of how you two met. And you were talking about LinkedIn before we went to the break. So tell me, because LinkedIn I've done a massive 360 myself on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's so have I.
Because
we all?
Well, because it used to be, well, let's just talk about it first. It used to be like almost like ads. You'd just go on it and it would be, I think you should do this and here's my experience of doing, And then all of a sudden for myself, about 18 months ago, I went, I'm going to treat it like Facebook. And I'm going to go on and say, I've just met with this person and you should do this.
It's
and
more
here's
human.
this that's more inspiring. And it's something seemed to shift, and all of a sudden, like engagement on Facebook, I'm lucky if I get, I've got 4,000 people on one of my pages, and I'm lucky if I get 8 views. I go on LinkedIn and I get 2,000.
Nice.
It's really, and you get to, that way of messaging people. So anyway, I'll stop waffling.
No
you
worries.
Start.
So I am always looking at LinkedIn to see who I can connect with. Living in Tasmania and in a small community, I was finding it hard to reach like-minded people. And then somehow Helen's portfolio came up, and I read it, and I looked at the work that she'd been doing and the sort of person that she is, and I thought, wow, wouldn't it be amazing to connect with this person?
Oh, so you just reached out cold.
Yes.
Okay.
Like I had
Great.
with a lot of other
cold
people.
call.
Do it all the time. Yep.
So I did that, but then she messaged back, and then she asked for my number.
Right.
And I was like, oh my goodness.
It's a human person.
And then she phoned me. I was gardening.
Yeah.
I was gardening, and this beautiful person took a chance and called me to say, hey, how are you? What are you doing with your life? I'd like to talk with you and get to know you. And it took me back. It was like, oh my goodness, someone's being so kind and they're paying attention to me. And then after a little while, I realised that she was actually really genuine and she just wanted to get to know me.
Yeah.
I mentioned I was going to Melbourne. She said, let's meet up for coffee. And I was like, oh my goodness. So not only didn't she know me, but she took an absolute chance. And we met, and I have never met somebody who's been so open to having a conversation and getting to know somebody on a really human level, not knowing anything about them.
Oh, that's
and so
fantastic.
she took this chance, and then since October, she has just nourished me and nurtured me and believed in me. And her no mucking around approach to, you can do this, has made me actually take these steps. It was like, no, just get on the phone. Here's the number. Here's this person. You can connect. So she was giving me almost like her IP.
Right.
And
so
I have never had anybody do that before. I never had anyone being generous saying, I believe in your journey. I don't see you as competition. I see you as somebody I want to walk beside. And for me, that was just so refreshing.
It is because, I mean,
She's
I
irresistible, though.
I know, but I feel exactly the same way. I feel like, you help people
Yeah.
and you do everything you can to help them. It comes back in other ways, but it enriches your own life from doing it. But I'm interested, now we've heard Summer's version of meeting you. What was going on in your mind through all of this?
Well, we've all had those very interesting LinkedIn, histories.
When someone sort of, that you don't know at all, reaches out and you kind of
The
think,
interesting thing, Jules, was that I had about 3,000 people on LinkedIn, and
Right.
they're all people I knew.
Right.
And a friend
That's going to be unusual.
Yeah. A friend of a friend sort of said to me, well, what are you going to do with all those people, Helen? And I said, really good question. I can call them. I can do anything I like, and I never talk to them on LinkedIn. So he actually came up with a provocation, and that was for me to go through all of my list.
Yes.
And anybody that I probably could have a conversation that I've never had before to leave on, and piffed the rest. It took me a whole weekend.
Wow.
I ended up with 61 people.
Are you serious? That's amazing.
It was like getting my gear off.
bet it was.
Yeah, it was. So I thought.
So you thought, well, if I've only got 61, I better really know them.
Absolutely. And I think of those 61, probably about 25 are now in conversation. So I started
How
again
amazing.
to put out the messaging, just as Summer had done.
Yeah.
And look, in 7 months, I probably reached out to nearly 6,000 people and have another 3,500 people now that I'm connected in some ways, and
And you know
probably
them.
2/3 of those would be conversations like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or a level. So this is a side gig
I
for
know
me.
I think that's a really interesting proposition to go through, because I definitely download it, and I've stopped saying yes to all the web guys and
Yeah.
the digital
Yes.
developers
Yeah,
and
the
anyone from the
virtual
Philippines has got to be.
assistants and-
Yeah.
So I've sort of stopped saying yes to those, but I would historically, I would think, probably
Yeah.
have a few hundred of them. So interesting to go back and cull and sort of start afresh and look what's
Yeah.
happened out of it.
That's right.
Well, it's interesting because when Summer popped up, there's always a motivation.
Yeah.
So I'm originally from Tassie.
Oh.
And
Same area? Whereabouts are you? Where's your rural area?
She's down south,
regional?
I'm from up
Yeah.
north, and
Right.
there's a real divide
There
between...
is.
Oh, is there?
So she reached out to a southerner.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yes, very woo-woo. But when I finished school, which was a long, long time ago, I decided at the age of 17 that Tassie was too small for me.
You along with an
So
awful lot
I
of people
needed
down there, I
to
think.
move, get out of the straitjacket and sort of get free. And so there was something in me that sort of said, I reckon it's going to be worth having a conversation with this chick.
Yeah.
And look, I do this every week. I invest about 5 to 6 hours
Oh, wow.
having conversations with people on LinkedIn who want to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And who, sometimes it's on the telephone, sometimes it's over a coffee.
Yeah.
And it's been amazing, Jules.
I'm going to have a coffee with you. That sounds fantastic.
Well, I'm finding out what's really going on in the
Yeah,
world,
I bet
which
you
is
are.
really a major and important part
Of what it
me.
is that you can
Yes.
do. Yeah, as
'Cause
well.
some of this stuff hasn't been published yet.
Right.
It's
yes.
all out there. And people are surprisingly generous and open and warm and enthused. And I think I'm
Which is a reflection of you as well.
Yeah,
I
I was
would
gonna
have
say.
to
Right,
say,
yeah.
people like attracts like, and if you've got a whole lot of false people around, they're not going to like you any more than you like them, really.
Yeah.
Well, the art of conversation is something I'm curious about. So I've had a bit of practice over time. So we got to connect and we agreed that we'd meet.
Yeah.
Well, that was, we were sitting in the foyer of the Western Hotel in Melbourne, and I don't think either of us took breath.
No, we didn't. We didn't.
For how long?
Oh, about an hour and a half the first
Yeah, it would have been
That's
close
not
to
bad for a
it
first
would have been
meeting.
a couple of hours.
Right.
So I think we kind of fed off each other.
Yeah.
This is about two expressives.
Yeah.
High energy, high curiosity, high creativity, and I
Bouncing off each other.
see in this gorgeous person a lot of what I feel and see in myself.
Yeah, right.
And a lot of it was around probably recognising some levels of frustration,
Yeah.
a lot of resilience, lacking a bit of confidence.
Yeah.
I've been there.
I was going to say you could actually probably have that as a list for most women.
Yeah.
Are like that when they start off in business,
So-
or even if they're employed as well. But I guess just because I'm sort of focusing on the own your business side. So what I'd like to do now, and that's fascinating that you two met, is I'd love to know. I haven't quite got a grasp on what it is that you do, Helen. Can you give me an example of a business that you've worked with and how it all kind of worked?
Well, I work with organisations that want to actually embrace a coach approach,
Yep.
and I think in a way.
So sorry, let me just go back. Do you work with the organisation or with just the CEO?
Sometimes I work with the organisation,
Oh right, okay.
and so I actually work with teams and
Yep.
a wider group of people. Sometimes it's even members of the board, the governance
Okay.
group.
Yeah.
But invariably, there's people who get excited about either having conversations or get connected to my energy
Yep.
and want to have some conversations. I mean, look, one really good example is a mate of mine. We both went through the MBA program many years ago through the AGSM. He rang me and said, Woodsy, I've got a really, top...
Woodsy.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just love that. Yeah, go on. Go on, Woodsy.
Top-notch guy here, who is probably CEO material, but he's struggling. And so I'd like to introduce you, and I think he could get something from some coaching.
Yeah.
And this particular guy, we've now been in a coaching relationship. I'm a bit embarrassed to admit this, for about 4 years, 4.5 years.
Why would you be embarrassed about that?
Oh well, I sort of
I would've
often
thought-
wondered whether it became a dependence thing, but in fact not. I mean, this person has just grown.
Yeah.
Amazingly.
Probably because you're there, sitting behind
Yeah.
his shoulder, and he knows he's got that support
And
and
I've got
someone
his
to talk
back,
to.
yeah.
And you've got his back.
So he always thought that he wanted to be the CEO. And
So what actually do you do with him though? What is
We
it? Counselling
meet-
sessions? Is it?
No, it's really a
Brainstorm?
conversation. There's no process.
Okay.
Jules. You turn up.
Whatever is the
and
issue that week.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's always something that's a bit of a burning issue.
Yeah. Right.
There's always something that's getting in the way, or there's always something that perhaps he's missed.
Yeah.
And that's why it's gone spectacularly sort of wrong.
Right.
So it's unpacking a lot of that stuff. And this is not about just the tactics and the tasks. This is about getting to something that's much deeper.
Yeah, you mentioned it, but because of course we all bring our baggage everywhere. I mean, you can't get rid of it just because you've suddenly
Absolutely.
become CEO. So I'm interested. Well, partly because there aren't loads of female CEOs, but do you work with sort of a lot of women, or is it mainly in the CEO confidential kind of role? Is it mainly men?
Men and women.
Yeah.
But a lot of women.
And what are there any sort of typical issues that women have that you notice that it's slightly different to men?
Look, I think I think that there's more modern vernacular now around diversity.
Yeah.
And diversity
I'm actually yes.
is fantastic, but it's not just about gender.
No.
It's about ideas, and it's about a whole lot of things. So.
And it's not about lip service either. That's
No.
the other thing. I actually got an email from someone this week about a conference that's being held for women on International Women's Day with, out of the 3 speakers, 2 were blokes. And I ended up having to send the guy an email, and I just said, I'm just letting you know, I can't go to this because I just so fundamentally
Good for you.
disagree.
Yeah.
But I also went, you're a bloke running a business for women, holding an event on International Women's Day. There are hundreds of great female speakers.
Yes.
Would you like me to introduce? And he said, no, I'll give you a call and tell you why this is so diverse. And I'm just like, he doesn't know what's going to happen by the time I have a chat with him.
Yes.
But that is sort of, what sort of happens, I think.
Well, it's such a mixed message.
Yeah.
And
It is.
and,
It's
it's just not right, really.
no.
So,
on any level. So yeah, sorry
so
I interrupt you.
That's often a big issue
For women?
For women. And one of the things is that around the diversity process, there are a lot of women who are fantastic, but who are getting pushed to the top. And
Too fast.
Too fast.
Because they're so desperate to get women up there.
Yeah, and then they become misplaced people in the system.
Which is really silly because there are lots of women outside of their system who would be perfect to fit that role as well. It's crazy,
Well,
isn't
the
it?
other thing is that's fine, but support them with a mentor and a coach, because a lot of them get coaches. And look, I was talking to somebody yesterday who's really, really senior in a top ASX listed company, who I'm pretty confident that we'll get to have some of those gorgeous conversations that matter. But that was talking about the problem for her in her business is it is the women who are at the top.
Right.
It's not the blokes.
Why is that a problem?
Well, it's women who've kind of become
Bitchy.
Bitchy and prototyped.
Yeah.
So
they've had to fit in a man's world to get where
that's
they
right.
are, and so they're not
they're hanging
supportive.
on to these roles.
Do you know, I read an article this week which I just thought was brilliant, so I'm interested to hear what both of you think. And it's again a massive company. I think it was I don't know whether it was an ASX company, but it was a big company, and the CEO had been appointed, and they took 2 women and their job sharing a CEO role. And I suddenly thought from because a lot of people think, oh, job sharing, and is that great? These women, I suddenly thought they've both got each other's backs. they're both in a role that's very difficult,
Yeah.
and that you need that bit of support. I just thought how clever that was, and how that would work particularly for women. I mean, I could imagine might be harder for men, probably not if they're going to be backstabbing each other, but if they've both been given the role and they're juggling it, and what these women did, which I also thought was really clever, is they haven't split the tasks. They've said we'll all be across everything.
Right.
I think that's brilliant.
Isn't it a great idea?
Yeah. It's probably only women who can do it.
I don't think, I can't imagine that blokes would be
it's
comfortable
just too
with that.
much ego. And I think that
Now, I mean, I'm not saying 10 years from now,
Yes.
because I think that the guys that are coming up, I mean, I've got 3 sons, and as I watch them grow, I don't think they would have an issue, but I definitely think that the people of our age, the grey-haired old men who are running things at the moment, would not like somebody else muscling in on their
and
territory.
some of those women who have gone through to these big roles, and they've talked, some are great examples of talking about being mentored by people who have been men, who've been more traditional.
Yeah.
And I think there is, a lot of ego in some of that. It's a cult.
But of
it's a
course
cult.
there is as well. I mean, because basically you've got yourself to the top of the tree,
Yeah.
and that's where everybody, will sit and go, "Wow, you're amazing, you're a CEO." So there's a whole lot of things around that, particularly as a man, when you need those cues are much more important. Well, I don't know whether they're more important, but they seem to react differently to the way that we react. So,
well, what we do not exclusively, but generally try to set up in the conversation. So when I have a coachee, I will get somebody in the organisation to sponsor that person.
Okay.
So it's generally somebody senior.
Yep.
It might be that person's
Boss or boss's boss.
boss. So that they've always got somebody who's watching their back.
and how do you organise that though? What if they don't have any friends in there, or
well,
do they have to organise it, or
They have to approach somebody.
right?
And I think these are the sorts of things, and these are the kind of conversations that we've had in terms of sometimes working from the inside out.
It's a very clever strategy, because if you do have someone championing you inside, you
Yes.
will never be alone.
No, that's right.
It's
like the job share.
Yes,
you've just
it
been
is
talking about.
immediately, and I mean, I've been very lucky in that I haven't worked for very many people over my career. Most of the time, I've worked for myself, but when I have, I've had bosses that still I can hear things they've said to me in their life, and I've always felt so sort of supported. And only once did I have an absolutely awful woman who just. I remember her coming up to me going, "If you don't behave yourself, I just want you to know I used to be a psychiatric nurse, and if anybody
Slap
pissed us
you.
off, we used to duck her head in the toilet." And I was like, "Oh my God, am I in prison?" Like it was just so scary. But I mean, that's back in the 80s, and that's what some women were like when they got very senior in big organisations. Wow, so you've got an interesting job though. Really interesting role.
I feel humbled and honoured and excited. Every conversation is very different. It never ceases to amaze me. Coming out of conversations, and look, I often turn up with a bit of trepidation myself.
Yes, of course.
Because people.
You never know if you're going to like them, get on with them, whether they're going to be holding the same values, whatever.
We ask people to use their own data, so we use some diagnostic tools, and sometimes the feedback that comes back is pretty in your face.
Right. And do you still work with those people?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there people that you just say, "Nah, I'm not in business to work with someone like this," or you think, "No, there is always good in everyone"?
Look, I guess occasionally there's somebody, and I have a bit of insight and intuition about this, that feels like the uncoachable coachee, but I don't think I've ever rejected anybody in terms of that. And the creativity around, I think the way that I can operate actually helps people see another way. It really is an opportunity. Even when you get that feedback that's a bit tough, helping people see that there's some gifts and some hidden gains in there.
Yeah, and let them sort of, not take it at face value and actually absorb it, rather than just being insulted or hurt or whatever. All right, well, look, girls, we're just going to stop. We're just going to have a break now for another couple of minutes, and then we will be back for the last part of the show, where I think we're going to start talking about some of the things we've learned along the way, and maybe some tips that we can offer to help you. So we'll see you in a few minutes.
Ticker. This is Ticker.
From Ticker, you're watching She's the Boss. Here's Jules Brooke.
Welcome back to She's the Boss, and my fabulous guests Helen Woods and Gwynne. So we're just going to keep talking a little bit about what we've learned along the way running businesses. But the first one, Summer, can you tell me some of the challenges or a light bulb moment that you have had somewhere along the way?
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
great, go for it.
Even though Tasmania is very small, because it's so small, you can actually access a lot of really inspiring, motivating people. And for me, one of those was actually Lara Giddings, who
Right.
was the first Premier of Tasmania.
Wow.
And I had the fortune of actually having a conversation with her where I went along and asked for some sponsorship to help me to get to a course in Melbourne to help me with my business.
Yeah.
And I thought I was only going to be there for 15 minutes or so. We were there for an hour and a quarter.
Wow.
She wanted to hear my story and what it was I wanted to achieve. She didn't want the 15-minute or 15-second sales pitch. She wanted to know my background and my...
Yeah, really get to know you.
And then she encouraged me to ask questions, and for me that was just amazing. So I'll never forget that conversation. And out of that, she just looked at me and she said, "You have to be true to yourself." The
isn't
other
that great
message that she
advice?
gave me was run your own race.
Yeah.
And to be hearing that from the first female Premier of Tasmania for me was like just gold.
Yeah,
So I
absolutely.
have carried that with me my whole journey.
That is so true. Run your own race. I really love that because
Yeah.
I actually am very good friends with the woman who runs Source Bottle, and she and I have lots. I don't know whether you've heard of Source Bottle. It's a resource for PR, but she and I have had a lot of conversations about competition.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, and she's one of them, do not like competitors. And she
Yes.
immediately goes, "Oh my God, somebody else is trying to get into my space."
Yeah.
And I'm like, give them a call.
Yeah.
Why don't you give them a call and see if you can do something together?
Yeah.
And that's completely the way I always think, which is
Yes.
I don't have competitors. I go like this.
Yes.
You know, doing my own thing. If you're doing something in your space, what can we do
Oh,
together?
I have the same philosophy. So
Yeah.
having a small business in Hobart can sometimes be tricky if there are people with a similar business.
Yeah.
So on a regular basis from the beginning, I've reached out to those people who own the same business, and I've had the most beautiful,
Yes,
encouraging conversations.
same.
Once they've realised I wasn't ringing them because I wanted something.
Or saying cease and desist.
Exactly. When they realised I was actually genuine.
How can I help you?
And to do that, I often gave them something. So I gave
Yes.
them some information. I gave them a connection or or something to help empower them on their journey. And then they realised that I was like, oh, wow, she's being really nice. It wasn't, oh, I've only got a minute to spare, tell me what you'd like to say. It then became a 20-minute conversation from something they were already saying, I'm shutting myself off to you, but make it quick.
Yeah.
So that has been really refreshing for me to actually take the lead with that. Okay, someone started a similar business to me. That's fantastic, because I believe very much in the principle of there's always enough.
Yes, abundance. And the other thing I think is so for me, I started a business that was DIY PR 10 years ago. That was at a time when hardly anyone knew what PR was.
Yeah.
And nobody was thinking about doing it themselves. And over the years, I have watched more and more companies start in this kind of space.
Yeah.
And the way I think of it is now, because there's a few of them, people A, recognise that PR is something, and B, it means that there's now a sector that they kind of go, okay, this is something that I need to do, which that you don't when you're sitting on your own and there's nobody else doing what you're doing. So I think it's very flattering as well. It's kind of validates your idea, doesn't it? Somebody else is doing it, so it must be good.
Well, competition is good for business.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think...
Well, it's certainly good for the consumers.
Absolutely. But, even in business.
Yeah.
So competition and collaboration sit very close to each other.
Yes.
Because I think people, again, have a blind spot. They see them at one end of the spectrum and the other.
Yeah.
And in fact...
If I help you, you're going to take my customers, rather than why don't we do something together and see if we can get 10 customers instead of one.
And if you can lift each other up, you actually become true to yourself
Yeah.
again. For me, my values of actually, respecting, compassion and giving, all that sort of thing fits in then with my idea of like, okay, I want to help you. You've got a new business venture. You've got something very similar to me, but let's do this together. Let's work together to help more people.
Yeah.
And that's where the magic actually happens.
and the
right.
leverage.
Yes, that's
And
right.
there's a fantastic quote from Madeleine Albright that I quote ad nauseum. You've probably heard me say it already on the show, but she says there's a special place in hell for women that don't help other women, and I just love that because it is so true.
Yes.
And it
It's
comes
so
back
true.
to that split role
Yeah.
with our two women. The leverage, the opportunities, the time. It's just powerful. It's it's creative.
Yeah. So let's go to you. Can you tell me a story about something that...
For me, one of the things that I've done regularly is reinvent myself.
Yes.
And the reinventing process, some people...
How regularly? So let me just ask as well.
Well,
Are
it
you talking
probably
about
happens-
shifting careers as like every 5 years, or are you talking about every year you do a refresher, like
Look,
a
I
spring
think
clean?
it's every year.
Yeah.
It is about also having your antennae up and bringing on new information,
Yes.
new people into your lives. So
Brings a
these-
different stimulus.
These people I talk to, as my side gig, actually there's another business in there.
Yeah.
That I could sort of press the
Run
button
with.
on. Yeah. So, and life is full of choices.
Yes.
So the reinvention thing is always about just getting, a little bit of soot off the bits that are...
And how do you reinvent yourself? What do you do?
Well, often
Is
it's
there a
about
process?
taking up an idea. It might be going to a conference. It might be doing some training. One of the reinventions that I'm doing at the moment, I still run my brand, but I've joined another collective called Leading Well, which really embraces the whole system, the organisation as a whole system. So
Right.
they're still coaching the CEO and whoever, but it's bringing one conversation to leadership, culture and performance.
Right.
So that's about wellness, it's about bringing in a whole lot of other
Sort of like the whole holistic
Yes.
kind of everything.
So that's
yeah.
part of, and it of course it feeds me, in my my day job.
Yeah.
And the reinvention piece, I think, is also another good example for me. Is that I think the spirit of generosity and being available and turning up, showing up,
Yeah.
and being part of a
Yes.
conversation is really important. So over the years, I've been involved in mentoring dozens of gorgeous young women in their businesses or in their lives or whatever. And Jules, the gift now is, and one of them now lives in San Francisco and she's coming back to Australia in a couple of weeks' time, and I got an email just this morning saying, Helen, I'm coming to Melbourne. Can we
We've got
get
to catch
together?
up."
Because she's my mentor now.
Right. Oh, so it flipped.
Well,
Sort
she's
of.
young, she's doing stuff
Yep.
that I don't even know about.
That's right.
So I'm the one that sort of sends a little message out saying...
But that, I think, but that in itself is something that you do need to leave yourself open to these opportunities and changes. In fact, being on this show prompted me to do a story earlier this year on social media where I said this is how it happened for me. You know, I came in for an interview and was asked would I like to co-host a show. Now, if I hadn't said yes, all of this would have disappeared. So it's really, and I mean, I certainly wasn't expecting to do that. I wasn't, but it's just like, you know, you do just have to be open to opportunities and then decide to take them when they come.
Yeah. And that's kind of what sort of happened
Brings
in
us
one of
straight back
those
to
very
summer.
early conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, being open to some ideas, having somebody just give you a little bit of a confidence boost.
Yes.
This person here is unstoppable.
That's great. I can't wait to
amazing.
see what
Yeah.
you
But
do,
to
Summer.
have
You'll probably
Helen
end up
to-
as the premier down there.
Goodness. But having Helen believe in me, but not just do that, but take the next step of saying, I'd like you to meet this person, I'd like you to meet this, you need to connect with this person. And then for me then to be that little bit brave and say, yes, I'm going to do that today. Not tomorrow, not next week. Thank you, Helen. You've given me this
Let
now
me
and
go.
I will
You
do
did
it.
it at the time.
She did.
Because
Well, I
I
actually
have
did.
got the LinkedIn thing that says, I'm sitting with a woman called Helen Woods who says that we need to connect.
Yes.
No,
Can
she's
we
amazing.
connect?
So
And I was like,
just do
great.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just do it.
Well, because if you don't just do it, you forget.
Yeah.
That's right.
Or something else comes up, or you
Well,
take time and you think, oh, now I don't know how
I
I'd
might
approach
get
it.
knocked
What
back.
shall I
Yes.
say?
Yes.
You know, all that kind of thing. So just do it.
But just
Take the
having
bull by the
someone
horns.
sitting in a chair next to you gives you the confidence that you can actually send that message and have
Yes.
someone to reflect with about that afterwards.
And
go,
know
well
that they're
done,
not
you know.
going to know that even if you are rejected, you've got someone beside you to go, well, they're
Yes,
lost.
yeah, exactly.
Exactly, but
Yeah.
to be there and watch it happening in front of your eyes is
Yes,
pretty amazing as well.
fantastic.
So
We did
I
that.
was
I
on
mean,
the
that
journey.
That's
Yeah.
right, and really for the three of us, that was what, 3 weeks ago or something, or
Yes.
4 weeks ago that
But
you sent that.
Helen's
Yes.
helped me many times through having coffee with her and her giving me a number. I've sat there, I've sent out the message, and as a result, I've been connected with the CWA
Fantastic.
here
That's perfect for
in
you.
Melbourne.
Yeah.
I've gone and fed the homeless lunch somewhere, which has then inspired me to be brave to sit in a boardroom at the Hilton while I have a teleconference.
Oh, she's
All
amazing.
these things have
Yeah.
come from the fact that Helen has said, okay, here's an opportunity, here's a person, what are you going to do? And I'll just sit there
I'm
and
gonna
try and
call
make
them.
it happen.
Yeah.
And for me,
I
that
love
has
that
just been
attitude.
gold.
I've always had that kind of just do it.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, I always say the same thing about women when they're saying, "Oh, I don't know whether I should set up a business or not." And I'm going, "What have you got to lose? If you haven't got a job now, and you
Yes.
might have a chance of doing something with a passion, and the worst thing that'll happen is it won't work, and you'll go back
Yeah.
to looking for a job. So
Yes.
what's to lose?"
Yeah.
And we were talking about being on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You know, the thing that works for me is that when somebody wants to have a chat, often I just pick up the phone
Yes. Yes.
and they're on
Yep.
and I'm on.
Yep.
And that's when it happens.
Yes.
That's when the magic happens.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
you've just got to do it.
Yeah, I totally
In the
agree. So
moment.
there is
Yeah.
that is our big takeaway from today. It is
Yeah.
something that you just need to do.
Yes.
So have either of you got any other stories that you would like to share with us around something to do with your businesses or something that you could
yeah.
offer somebody else?
Having a small business and living in a small community, it is sometimes really hard to get yourself out there.
Yeah.
Particularly when people may be doing similar things, or you're really busy and you know what it is that you could be doing but don't always have the time to do it. And you get rejected a lot. So something that Helen has really helped me with, and I keep remembering this, is that you need to keep putting yourself out there. But every time there is a no or no response, or you are rejected, that is an opportunity for redirection.
Yes.
And
Or for ignorance, because I kind of go, if they don't want it, that's their problem.
Yes.
I forget I even rang them. I'm just getting on with the
But
rest
when I
of
get
the
Or
people.
for a not now.
yes,
Yeah, or for a,
you need
you know,
to check it out.
Yeah.
that's right.
So
We'll
checking
park
it
that
out
for a
is-
while.
yeah,
And
yeah.
not taking
Come
it
back later.
personally.
Yes.
For me, that's been really
I think
important.
probably as a woman, I think that's one of the
Yeah.
really
Really
big ones,
Yeah.
because we do feel that they're rejecting us when actually they're probably rejecting our business.
Yes.
I mean, as I said, I work a lot with people in PR, and obviously there's a lot of rejection around that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I say to people is, it's not you. It could be that they've done a story like that recently.
Yes.
It could be that they're having a bad day. I
Yeah.
mean, there's all sorts of reasons that people say no. And as you say, often they can say yes later on. So
Yes.
don't give up if it's something
That's
that you
right.
really want.
But to have somebody to remind you of that, to not listen to that ego voice, to have someone to say, it doesn't matter, that doesn't mean anything. Don't read into it. It's okay.
Yeah.
We'll just go on to the next thing. That to me is so powerful. It gets you out of yourself and that rut that you can sometimes get into.
And certainly when I talk with my partner as a male, he doesn't take that. He doesn't take things personally at all.
Right.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. You just kind of go,
Misinterpreted.
"Look, don't worry about it that they said no. It doesn't really
Yes.
matter." And he's like, "I'm not worried." Oh my God, I'd be in bits. I'd be in the floor.
Yeah.
Give me a couple of minutes to just recover.
Yes.
And they go, no, it's fine.
So there is that element of moving on. I mean,
Yes.
sometimes you just have to
Yeah.
move on.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm a great one for keeping tabs. So what I do is I put little notes in my diary like 6 months or a year
Yes.
ahead
Yeah.
and say call so-and-so, and then I always have to say Messenger, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever I know
Yes,
them
that's
from,
right.
so I can find it again.
We do the
And,
same thing.
yeah,
And
Yeah.
those people, when you call them, 3 or 4 months down the
can have a very different attitude.
exactly,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they are absolutely chuffed.
Yes, that you've
that you
remembered.
remembered them.
Yeah.
Yes, and one of the biggest things that somebody said to me in my business in terms of doing sales and things is they said, don't discount the fact that you as the founder ringing someone
Yeah,
makes them
it's
go,
very
oh my
powerful.
God, I
Yeah.
can't believe that you are taking the time out.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, there's something really strong there for people, get on the phone and call people if you need to, because
Yeah.
often they'll be shocked that you have remembered that
That's
you are
right.
interested still or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I think some of our other technology gets in the way of actually, being in the space together. And
Yeah.
look, it's not always possible to be eyeballing people.
No, and in that way
Yeah.
technology is great because
Yeah.
I love Zoom
Get on
and
Zoom,
Google
yeah.
Hangouts
Yeah.
and all that sort of thing. I mean, sometimes, other times if I'm in my dressing gown. You sometimes if you work for yourself, you get up in the morning, you just, get into work, suddenly it's 11 o'clock and you've got a conference call and you're like, oh my God, how can I make my head look like I'm dressed?
That's right, exactly.
It's tricky.
Yes.
That's another show.
It is. All right, girls. So we're going to have to wind up the show in a tick.
Thank
Let's
you.
start with you, Summer. How can people find you if they want help?
So on Facebook, it's Summer Breeze Consultancy. Otherwise, my website is sbconsultancy.com.au.
And you can actually, I know you can Google Summer Breeze and it comes up with
Exactly.
the consultancy
Yep,
as
that's
well.
it. Yep, that's
Great.
it.
Okay.
Thank
and
you.
do you only help people in Tassie or do you help people
No,
nationally?
everywhere.
All right,
so
great.
I
There you
can
go.
do the whole Skype thing or phone calls, or actually just do fly.
Yeah.
She's
The old
a
get on a
traveller.
plane
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
And Helen, how do people get hold of
CEO
you?
Confidential on the website, or Helen
Is it
Wood,
.com.au?
.com.au.
Yep.
And Helen Wood's on LinkedIn.
Great. All right, well, look, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed She's the Boss today. My name is Jules Brooke. I'm the founder of a business called Handle Your Own PR, where I teach business owners how to get publicity. And let me tell you, it's really easy. You just need to know how to do it. And we have a fantastic sponsor for the show, Havana Home, Judith Bruce, who runs the most fabulous business. She makes fragrances herself. They are divine. And she supports female artists in her packaging, and she's an all-round great chick. So thank you very much for joining us on the show today, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week.
This is Ticker, your new source for news.